a recent point of contention amongst many social media users, as well as a frequent topic of debate amongst circles of inebriated young men, is with regards to why gorillas are so astoundingly yoked. They are, by some margin, the most massive primates alive today. I mean, the eye test alone will tell you that much. Quizzically though, gorillas are not the most massive primate to have ever existed in history. That honor goes to a distant rainforest-dwelling Asian relative of theirs. Now, the question of why gorillas are so large and muscular is a very valid one. The order of primates in general is largely not one composed of towering, muscle-bound behemoths. In fact, the large majority of primates tend to be quite small and are in fact excluded entirely from the category of megafauna. Megafauna, by the way, need only exceed a mass of roughly 45 kilograms, so these are quite small creatures we're talking about. The primate way of life is not one which necessarily calls for the development of a large frame and overly muscular physique. Gorillas, in more ways than one, are an oddity which clearly muscled their way out and above the ordinary doctrines of primate physiology. First, I should probably begin impressing upon you just how massive gorillas can grow to become. After all, what good is a video about gorilla strength without the sinking feeling of inadequacy and regret for being born as puny and pathetic as you have been? Gorillas can range in adult height quite wildly, with the shortest gorillas having been observed middling around the bottom end of 4 feet tall. However, adult gorillas can also grow to be as tall as near enough 6 feet, rivaling a large share of the adult human male population in height. Gorillas are not the equal of humans in the vertical plane, however, as they are much broader and stockier than virtually any modern human. In fact, I scarcely believe any of the more ancient hominids could even come close to rivaling an average male gorilla's brawn, and some of them were quite robust indeed. Also, a quick point to mention regarding gorilla height is the fact that these are of course only heights that have been observed, and only gorillas that observers have actually been able to get close enough to for actual measurement. This is to say that the actual range and variation of gorilla height is likely to be larger than this among modern populations, saying nothing of the variation of gorilla height as it may have been throughout its species history. In terms of mass, adult gorillas can grow to weigh as little, in quotation marks, as 220 pounds, and can grow to be as gargantuan as 600 pounds at the more extreme end. The stark contrast between how gorillas turned out and how the rest of the primate clan turned out is quite shocking indeed. Modern humans themselves are no slouches in the size department, outweighing most terrestrial species. Yet still, the smallest gorillas known to modern science are in the 95th percentile of modern human weight, and they don't even have the advantage of McDonald's and Krispy Kreme. Although it should be mentioned, one unfair advantage gorillas have is their considerably larger arm spans. Both objectively and proportionally, gorillas have larger arms than humans outright and also have longer arm length to trunk length ratio. This of course allows gorillas to actually fit more musculature onto their longer frame, allowing them to attain a larger mass. Also, their larger, bulkier arms are more necessary for gorillas, given they have to haul the rest of their enormous bodies around with said arms. Modern gorillas are divided into 2 species, both residing in equatorial Africa. These are the eastern gorillas and western gorillas. The 2 species are then further divided into 2 subspecies each. The western gorilla splitting into the western lowland gorilla and the cross-river gorilla, and the eastern gorilla splitting into the eastern lowland gorilla and the mountain gorilla. Speaking generally, the eastern gorillas tend to be slightly larger on average than the western gorillas. So, taking the largest adult male specimen of the eastern gorilla as a nominate specimen of gorilla girth, why did they get so large? Many seem to be of 2 minds as to why gorillas uniquely amongst modern primates evolved to be so large. In truth, it is very likely a combination of both hypotheses that led to this. First theory attributes the gorilla's enormity to the diet that it evolved to subsist upon. Speaking very generally and also reductively, there are a set of advantages and drawbacks associated with evolving to be primarily herbivorous or carnivorous. The advantage afforded to the carnivore is that they have access to an incredibly calorically and nutritionally dense food source in the form of meat. The disadvantage suffered by the carnivore is that the food source is of course considerably more difficult to acquire and is also much less widespread. Also, it requires a much higher energy investment to acquire said food source. Or does it? Here we get to the crux of the hypothesis, the idea that gorillas evolved to be so large specifically because they are herbivores. Also, I am aware that many herbivores in the wilderness do also occasionally feed on animal life when they get the chance, and that this also extends to gorillas. But for brevity's sake, I'm just going to refer to gorillas as purely herbivorous from now on. Now, because gorillas have evolved such a slant towards herbivory, and more so than any other primate, mind you, they have also perplexingly evolved a much larger body size as a result, or so the theory goes. You might think that a diet bereft of almost any kind of animal protein would be unlikely to bestow a creature with such heft. However, an interesting artifact of herbivorous diets is the necessity of herbivores to evolve large, complex digestive systems. This is needed as tough, fibrous plant matter is much more demanding on the digestive system than hunks of tender, easily digestible muscle and organs. Especially in the case of the gorilla, whose diet largely consists of huge amounts of leaves and bamboo shoots with a small sprinkling of fruits and insects. This places an enormous pressure on the gorilla to evolve a deep and elongated digestive tract in order to digest all this plant matter. Similarly, the gorilla's jaw, skull, and chewing musculature also evolved to be larger as a result of all the intensive chewing the gorilla does. Spending all day placing intense masticatory stress on the skull and jaw have granted the gorilla an enormous cranium. This supersizing effect of committed herbivory is theorized to have been what gave gorillas their huge mass. All in all, this idea is not so surprising when you consider the families of ruminants and cervidae. These creatures have evolved to be among the largest terrestrial species on Earth, at present at least. The elephant is another great example. They all have large complex digestive systems and have also themselves evolved large proportions. The other leading hypothesis as to why gorillas attain the size that they have is admittedly less convincing to me, but likely still has some merit and has played some part in gorilla evolution. It is the sensual dimorphism hypothesis, the result of the highly polygynous gorilla society. The idea being that male gorillas, as a result of their intense physical competition with one another for access to as many reproductively viable females as possible, evolved their large size as an asset in these male-to-male competitions. This is a sound hypothesis, as this is known to occur in other highly polygynous species. It is in fact likely the reason why many species seem to have the large scary male, small neotenous female dynamic. It also nicely accounts for the large dearth in size between adult male and female gorillas of all of the subspecies. However, the reason I say it is less convincing of a hypothesis, speaking for myself, is that highly polygynous harems are a common feature amongst many animal species and even among some primates. For example, the Hamadryas baboon is known to field harems with small numbers of males and large numbers of reproductive females. Polygyny was even hypothesized to have been the mating system of various early species of hominids, such as Ardipithecus and Australopithecines. However, this did not result in the gigantic size we observe amongst gorillas occurring in any of the aforementioned species. In fact, early hominins are actually thought to have grown larger in size as they shifted increasingly towards monogamy. Again, I'm sure the theory had some contributing effect, but I think it cannot independently account for the large size of gorillas. In my opinion, the herbivory hypothesis seems to be the most convincing, as it is both able to account for the uniquely large size of gorillas amongst modern primates, and also able to account for why gorillas have a disproportionately foliage and vegetation-based diet amongst primates. So the next time you step off the gym scale disappointed with the results after months of lifting, blame your craven ancestors for gorging themselves on mammoth meat and not brushing up on pickup artistry enough.